And this is our new segment, Budget Cars. There are a lot of questions from subscribers about how to enter the world of off-roading on a budget. To fully immerse myself in the material, I of course bought a Niva for myself, because when you take a car for a test drive, it's impossible to fully immerse yourself in the experience. I bought this car for a whopping 135,000 rubles. The main thing is, in the Niva, so that it has a tow bar,
the back,
everything's patched up. It's clear that it's been welded, filled, and touched up. These days, an iPhone costs...
Remember, this is your car and cherish it always.
It's definitely already customized for me. It's rusty. I also have a rusty UAZ.
It's frustrating for you, isn't it? Sleep work. Funny. They smoked in the cabin, right?
Listen, I don't know. I scrubbed the ceiling and you can see that yellow stain, right? They smoked and cursed and you can still hear the cursing. Look, they sat there burned. Well, burned. Yeah, they smoked. What can you do? It's a Russian car, right? Yeah. Oh, little dog. When you are dealing with the airbag system, especially when you are trying to conceal the pillar on both sides, it's important to adjust it in a way that suits your personal needs and preferences. This adjustment process is crucial to ensure that the airbag fits you perfectly, almost as if it was custom made for your comfort and safety. It's like a normal procedure that you should follow to ensure everything is in place. I would say that this allows you to stretch out comfortably and you can maneuver yourself. The toy is just sitting there waiting for its turn.
Let's take a moment to go through some of the lighter projects in a bit more detail as you really get into it, and even the tuning is set up quite nicely, which is something that can be appreciated by everyone involved. Scary. Danya.
Yeah, well, that means it's fine. The effect is achieved. If it's scary, then it's normal, you know? Everything's working out. It doesn't fall apart on Cassinia. Listen, it seems to me that it buzzes less than the new ones. I like it, you know? Sometimes you like a car, sometimes you don't, but that's normal. It has an airbag. All right, that's it. Moving on. It appears that the handbrake, a vital part of the vehicle's braking system, has broken off. This might be the case because when you pull it, you have to do so twice, which engages the low gear. The low gear is important as it provides more power to the wheels at lower speeds, useful for uphill driving or towing. Additionally, pulling these two levers together, also engages the low gear, and this action blocks the music system, preventing audio playback. Despite these quirks, the system functions well overall, with no major operational issues. They gave me a lift. Yeah, it seems great, right? We'll get used to it. But his side windows aren't tinted. No. From the Niva, the world indeed appears a bit darker. The Lada Niva has been produced since the year 1977. Many people think that nothing has changed in this car since those times, but that's actually not entirely true. In fact, however, there have been changes. The car has undergone quite a lot of significant and important technical changes, modifications, and it hasn't really changed much on the outside, to be honest, but the interior has also changed. In general, if you are interested in it, if you are planning to buy a car and your favorite brand has left the domestic market, or you just don't have enough money for some cool Mac, the car of your dreams, to settle down on the couch, more details. Right now, I'll leave you a complete, absolutely comprehensive, detailed and thorough summary about the Niva, and you'll understand if you need a car like that. This in-depth overview of the Niva will help you determine if a vehicle like that is what you need. Jumping ahead, I'll say that we won't be doing any major modifications or tuning on this car. Our task is to test this Niva exactly in the condition it was left by Grandpa. We're going to test it pretty hard during the operation. As you know, viewers of our channel, we're going to test it to the max and see if the stock car can handle it. Heavy off-road? Let's go over the car's specifications. Here is the engine installed. By the way, that's the first change. During the evolution of the Niva in the old days, back in the 70s and 80s, it had a 1.6-liter engine. It's the same regular Zhiguli engine as in the classic models. This one has a larger engine. This car is from 1996 and it has a 1.7-liter engine with a power output of 79 horsepower. And based on my little experience driving this car, I can say now that if everything is set up well, the engine is more than enough. The engine here is a carbureted 8-valve 4-cylinder. So, what's the fun part? These engines, everyone knows how to repair them. They are extremely simple. This motor simply cannot cause any problems in operation. If it starts to run poorly and you don't feel like fixing it, you can just take it out to your dacha, sell it for scrap metal, add half of what you got from the scrap yard, and buy a used one from a junkyard. You just take it out to your dacha, sell it for scrap scrap metal, add half of what you got from the scrapyard, and buy one from a junkyard. Another worker, that same evening you just put it back in and continue driving without a worry. And with this engine you can do the same thing. The spare parts are very cheap. And with this engine you can do the same thing. Spare parts are very cheap. Here actually about 15,000 rubles were invested in this car after the purchase.
I was thinking about the fog lights, and I'm wondering why they aren't working and how they turn on. Here, to be continued. So this materialized from the ad that the door, this is a common issue with the 12 model. It's a problem with the 12. You know this one, but I had it like that on the Classics. They opened it from the trunk side, wouldn't kick. I also opened it from the seat, some trendy ones on Mars. So the question is, did the handle come off? I also opened it from the seat, some trendy ones on Mars. So the question is, did the handle come off? No, it's fine. My favorite topic. I started with the wires. Yeah. Damn, I almost can't with Odag. You see, it started up at first, then it hurt a bit, of course. Look, the oil light is on at idle. There is a lot of oil. I looked. Problems with the steering, with the usual connecting rod, and the gearbox. You know, by the way, how do you check if the CV joints are crunching or not? Right from the start, basically, you turn on the differential lock, crank the steering wheel all the way, and then you go neither forward nor backward. Are you listening? What are you talking about this? Well, a little bit, I mean... So, that's it for you, right? It would have already started crunching on my Vaz. I mean, on the green one, it would have already started crunching.
Я говорю, на ВАЗе бы уже захрустели бы на зеленом 100%.
I'm looking at the glass topic. Sometimes differentials are placed front and back, engaging the lock to allow backward movement. If the car rolls by itself like now, there are no problems. But if it stops, you have different reductions. It's like on the Lada, they removed a couple, fitting from Zhiguli, Kopeka, and Troika. It's like on the Lada, they removed a couple. There's one like that, there's one like that, whatever the hell it is. They just fit from the Zhiguli, here from the Kopeka, and there from the Troika. Different gear ratios, axle broke, drives in neutral. The bridge fell apart, they rolled down what was shorter, and then it will be okay to drive on the free one. Yes, it's locked. I have a steering wheel stung with concrete. Well, yes, something like that. Well, this is the main problem of oil, that there is not enough power steering. By the way, the steering wheel is small. I would, in one place, if you're going to drive like that, I would put a factory one from a junkyard, bought it, but usually it's a Zhiguli. 7. Lesopalm. I'm currently positioned on the right side, directly in front of him, waiting patiently. The surroundings are quiet, and I can see him clearly from where I stand. It's a calm day, and I'm observing everything around us, ensuring that I don't miss any important details while I wait. Actually, just now, or not. Perhaps did you just get it? What, just now? Ah, there it is. There was a colorist. He jumped out. Andriuka, blew the head off the gas. No, really, everything's fine. It's a bit of a ride, but looks similar. It burned out normally, just reached the back. Oh, and there's Giader with a snorkel. I had the fire burn out in a normal manner at that location, and it eventually reached the back area. This process took some time as the flames gradually consumed the material, moving steadily towards the rear section until it was completely extinguished. Oh, and also Geeter, by the way, with a cord. We need to put a snorkel on it. This is an awesome thing. They usually don't throw it away. Here, so what's the deal? When you hit the water, this impeller just scatters everything all over the engine compartment. This water essentially, basically, and you just hit it. Usually all of this happens in the cutoff. And it just sucks all that crap into the carburetor. And then you start washing in the stream, taking it apart, basically. All that crap is aimed at you. Yeah, that's why it's kind of... The cream solves the money issue. Engine and transmission overhauled, not worn out. Well, the whole engine has been overhauled. The transmission, it's not worn out. And yeah, there are some nuances. Naturally, they will be minor. And yeah, there are nuances. Of course, they will be minor. All right, let's get you on the lift. The central type of angonchik plays to get enough of a t-shirt. It's more beautiful and trendy sports. By the way, we have pop-off like that now, just in time for autumn. So we don't have to deal with snot, right? You take off up the hill and then land sharply. It immediately breaks off the front end. It gets damaged. Steel differential for front axle used for rear, all metal, on Chevrolet ski suspension. Disconnects with steel differential. Steel gearbox for both axles, all metal, for Chevrolet ski suspension. Problem with uncoupling and steel gearbox. Started driving, needed to drive well to avoid damage. Doesn't handle well on stock wheels. Installed smaller ones, replaced front differential. Used tram bolt, casing broke. After reinforcement, kept braking. When I was still small, I immediately replaced the front differential. I started with a tram bolt, then the casing broke in half. After I reinforced it properly, it just kept breaking. In the future. One person, you know, did in short, he bought himself a new Niva. In short, he has the same problem. He doesn't have a transfer case. So, basically he cut out something like an 8, for 2 levers. He cut off the levers from the transfer case completely, in short, and made a plug out of something like foam. This is sound insulation for heaters. Just like how you insulate at home, he made a plug, closed it off, and Dima quietly removed it, so it became quieter in the cabin. It's really awesome when you need to turn it on and off. You just pull out a piece of pipe with a lever, just like on a ZIL. In short, with us on green, typically. Generally, usually the urine of a Quana is not needed. This is a lock, you really only need to drive there. I don't know, maybe once a year, roughly speaking. You see, the steering is a real problem with the steering mechanism gearbox. Honestly, it's not worth buying new cars like these now because they don't produce these steering differentials at the factory anymore. Which is to say, in other words, they have stopped manufacturing them. Essentially, this means that the availability of such parts is limited. Ultimately, therefore, the situation is not ideal. Because since 2008, they have all come equipped with power steering as standard, and they are either restored or assembled in the market. That is, if you buy a new one, you buy a known piece of crap and it's 50-50. So that's why here you'll only find ones from dismantling, as they are sourced from previously used structures and they need to be in good condition, which can be a problem due to wear and tear over time. But you can't buy anything decent because the market is saturated with low-quality options that don't meet the necessary standards. The little house has already been reinforced with additional support beams and materials. Everything was twisted because it wasn't catching the pull, which caused structural instability. The new fat one is also whole here and sits firmly in place. It was also a bit softer on the left than on the right, indicating a slight imbalance that needed to be addressed for optimal performance.
There you go. Hey, on the foam yet?
The total cost of all the spare parts and repair work, at the end of the video I'll definitely pin it, so wait for it, check out the prices. It's shocking, even probably to the owners of modern Russian cars and to the owners of foreign cars, especially the old and expensive ones. They'll just knock you out flat, and you'll start dreaming about upgrading the Niva. Let's move on. Since the late 90s, the carbureted 1.7 engine came out. In the 2000s, I think starting from 2005, they began to use fuel injectors in these cars. The power has increased to 81 horsepower, but from my observations, both theoretical and practical, a well-tuned carburetor, which can be adjusted for 1,000 rubles and cleaned by any carburetor specialist, drives a bit more lively. The car accelerates more sharply. More lively, it doesn't worry me.
What do you think, in your opinion, can a well-calibrated and tuned carbureted car pull and drive better than an injected one, like the same Niva?
Yes, of course, Niva drivers from all over the country. I'm sure a lot of you are watching us. Write in the comments, especially those who have driven both before and after. Which one drives better? A well-tuned carburetor or an injector? What's more low maintenance? What's easier to operate? And what consumes less gas? Very interesting. I'll definitely check it out later. I'll pay attention to your comments. And then I'll change this car for some other one that you're also interested in. By the way, if anyone doesn't know, I was a hardcore UAZ fan for 6 years before this, driving UAZ Patriots. On newer models, there's a very important thing. Besides the fuel injector, the injector provides more stable operation. So the carburetor works based on its tuning, which makes the car feel more alive. It's easier to operate, but more stable in performance. More precisely, the injector is stable in operation, and on newer models, a power steering system has appeared. Actually, here's the thing. I've been driving this car and I've pretty much gotten used to it. I'm in a car with power steering. It was hard to turn the wheel, but now it turns easily. Now I can turn it with one finger. It's like a gym. You drive, nothing breaks. Plus, it's cheap, a workout, all advantages. You get used to this car quickly. And it's cheap, and you can pump it up at the same time, so it's just one big plus after another. You can get used to this car and you can do it pretty quickly. So the car is quite soft. It's nice to drive, yeah, it's a bit noisy and it doesn't handle very well on the road. But you can get used to it. About a week. So in the first few days when I was driving, of course, it was uncomfortable after the Patriot. My Patriot is soundproofed, fully loaded. In short, it's quiet, nice and comfortable in it. It's much noisier here and much less comfortable. But at this point, I've already come to terms with it. Let's just say I've gotten used to it. And now I drive only the Niva every day and everything is great. The manufacturer states the fuel consumption figures for the Niva, highway in the area somewhere, 9 liters at speeds, up to 100 and about 10 liters in the city, based on my experience. But of course it's a bit more, it's probably hard to believe that it's 10, but it's a bit on average with the UAZ. In fact, the consumption is very gentle and it is not at all stressful. But in any case, after driving a large off-roader, I actually prefer the handling without power steering because you really feel the road. Everything is just, well, you can really feel everything. You go off onto the shoulder and you can really tell that you've hit the shoulder. The power steering levels all that out. On Russian cars, power steering does not work very correctly. They don't adjust their effort based on acceleration and so on. It's reliable and easy to maintain. Controls are standard for a Vazi, nothing complicated. And there's really nothing there that can break easily. So, as for the controls, everything is pretty standard, typical for a Vaza, nothing super complicated here. I am 1 meter 90 tall and I feel comfortable sitting in the car. I don't feel any discomfort. Even though there are no steering adjustments here, absolutely none. The only thing that contributes to our comfort here are some seats. They were definitely not installed from some foreign car. They were not installed from which one. But it seems like they're from some Japanese car, and compared to the original ones, these are lower and not as comfortable. It's really nice to reach for the lever. You know, many people say it's uncomfortable to stretch for it. I don't know, my hands can reach everything. That is, everything is quite close. Maybe it's just that I have long arms, but I find it comfortable. I'm still haunted by the karma of loose wheels. Recently I was driving and heard a crack. I kept driving but decided to check the wheel tightness. The front left wheel was loose. I thought, well, that's it for the drive shaft. I kept driving and driving, but I decided to get out and check the wheel tightness just in case, even though the sound was unusual. And the front left wheel was loose. Just a little more and it would have been boom. You can generally drive around the city up to about 80 km/h with the transfer case noise. There is of course noise. Actually, I'm going to drive it today to check the oil and replace it. Maybe it just needs more oil because when I got it, it was making less noise. What's the huge advantage of the Niva? The fact that it's a full-fledged off-roader, in my opinion. Although many consider it a crossover, I see it as a true off-roader because it has a transfer case. There is a center differential lock. By default, Nivas are always in all-wheel drive with a free differential. So the axle that has an easier time spins. Basically, it's almost like in a Subaru, just on the Niva. And you can lock it. There's also a low gear range which helps the car handle tough off-road conditions. There's a solid axle at the back. The front suspension is independent. As for the car's design regarding the suspension, the transfer case gearbox has not changed since the time it was invented. The car isn't fit for long trips. Oh, consider this if you travel often or need to transport items. It's inconvenient. Consider front-wheel drive cars for durability. Keep this in mind right away. If you often go somewhere, especially want to carry something somewhere, transport something not very well, it will be convenient to do this with its help. Here, it's better to look at some front-wheel drive cars in terms of durability. The standard Niva is reliable. If it doesn't undergo tuning, it lasts quite a long time. However, if you modify it, you will need to reinforce the suspension as the stock setup won't hold up. If it is not subject to tuning, it will run quite a long time and quite happily too. If you install larger wheels, you will need to reinforce the suspension because the stock setup won't hold up. The Niva doesn't have the durability for any serious upgrades. If you operate this car off-road carefully and tactfully, you shouldn't have any problems. Now let's try to accelerate to 100 km/h. If you operate this car off-road carefully, relatively carefully and tactfully, you shouldn't have any problems. Alright, now let's try to accelerate to 100 km/h. We'll be relying on the speedometer in the Niva. I'm not sure about its 100% accuracy, but it will give you a rough understanding. The constant all-wheel drive provides good traction. Unsure important it is with a 70 horsepower engine. Alright, let's go. Basically, I wouldn't recommend doing 100 too often in it because the safety features aren't very good in the Niva. Generally speaking, the safety features aren't very robust. Even, by the way, on the newest models, well, there's still no airbag in this hole. They just put it somewhere in the doors. So, even by today's standards, they couldn't find a place for an airbag in this car. In this car, overall, it handles quite comfortably at speed. As long as your steering isn't damaged and the alignment is set correctly, you won't experience any terrible discomfort. If you've ever had a Lada, you'll have something to compare it to. In general, the Niva is suitable as a first car. If you've ever had a Lada, you'll have something to compare it to. Overall, the Niva is suitable as a first car. It fits very well because it's relatively high compared to all the other cars. It has small overhangs, it has a high ground clearance, and a lot of space under the bumpers. So you don't really have to worry about where you're driving or how you're driving and so on. So the car will forgive you almost all the mistakes of a beginner driver. You can drive over potholes, bumps, and ditches. The suspension on the Niva is very soft. I suggest we take a look at the prices for new cars so we have something to base our decisions on. We understood how little 100,000 is for such a used car, and as the song goes in the north, in the song by the Gaza sector, and a month ago I wrote this song called Nose. Should we adjust the text according to the inflation rate, or should we just leave it as it was at the time of filming this video? The Urban will cost 90,000 rubles. And if we paint it, let's say, in raspberry color, by the way, this is one of the few cars that still come in such cool colors. Not just gray, black, or brown. It will cost 2,000 rubles. You will say 900,000 rubles is expensive? By the way, I remember how just a couple of years ago someone was shouting that it was too expensive. It's like 500, 600, and it should cost almost 200 new. Now the prices are like this, but pay attention now that many people don't follow the market for you and don't. I briefly kept an eye on it and was almost shocked. I believe the closest competitor among imported models is the Suzuki Jimny. It's similar in size, similar in shape. Yes, it is, of course, a bit more loaded in terms of features, but nevertheless, it's very close to this car in terms of everyday practical functionality. Let's take a look at the Suzuki website, specifically the Suzuki Jimny in its configuration. G, LIX. This is the price with an asterisk, meaning there are some hidden catches in this price of 2,649,000 rubles. But you can calculate for yourself how many of them you can buy for the price of a Suzuki Jimny, which is 2,700 in total. I think without any asterisks, it will be all 3 million. The Suzuki Jimny costs that much, and the UAZ Hunter is also one of the closest competitors. Such competitors in cars similar in spirit cost 4 million. The classic configuration, which has absolutely nothing. This car will be as empty as a drum. Let's go to the Jeep Wrangler website. Since it's also a 3-door, all-wheel drive vehicle, and there we will see an error. 403 when accessing, which means they completely refuse to comment on what's happening. By the way, strange error, usually 404, but they have 403. Something very serious happened. It happened, but the bottom line is that you can't buy anything even remotely similar for this kind of money. It's just impossible. I'm talking about new cars, and for 100,000 rubles you can get a phone that costs more. For this kind of money, you can get a car that still runs and can solve any of your tasks. But this is just a gift. Well, that's really it. There are no options. It's not that it's all-wheel drive. There are no other options. With front-wheel drive besides the Lada. Joy of the Niva, drive it anywhere. So you can drive it absolutely anywhere. Other road users treat Niva quite indulgently, probably because grandfathers often drive such cars, well, or for some other reason. By the way, be sure to write in the comments how you picture a Niva owner. I mean, when you see a Niva, who do you expect to see behind the wheel of that car? How do you picture Niva drivers in your eyes? In general, thanks to the fact that the Niva is like this, well, at least I'm talking about Tver right now, the attitude towards this car in Tver is that it's not a bourgeois car, so people regard them condescendingly, and they don't cut in front of them or get in their way and so on. Overall, it drives quite comfortably around the city, and they don't cut in front of them or get in their way and so on. Overall, it drives quite comfortably around the city. I personally don't notice any kind of hatred from other drivers in my experience, and as a matter of fact at all. The only downside is that people are always trying to overtake you. No matter how fast you're going, it always seems to everyone that you're not going fast enough. It's a Niva, they've gotten used to them as slowpokes. Because of this, people often unnecessarily try to overtake. I drive, well, immediately. I mean, I go at the speed of traffic within the city limits, and they still try to overtake the cars. In a Niva, you can afford to go wherever you want, straight ahead, to the side, anywhere at all. On a bold stretch of road, in the middle of nowhere, driving in any direction, is quite valuable, and by the way, it's not that expensive either, which is something I really appreciate about it. Moving around is both convenient and enjoyable, offering a sense of freedom. Firstly, the fact that it practically does not change on the outside is a huge plus for those who drive old ones, not yours, because it is not clear whether it is a new car or not. For example, this one has a modern radiator grille and large contemporary headlights, making it seem modern, even though it's from '96. You can compare it to a G class. They restyle models, add plastic trim, and it looks new, so you don't look old. Nobody really knows, especially those unfamiliar with it. They wouldn't know if it's from 2018 or 1981. Nobody really knows, especially those who aren't in the know. They wouldn't know if it's from 2018 or 1981. That's a huge plus. Is it from 2018 or 1981? That's a huge plus. Niva, unlike old cars, has 3-door, 5-door, and pickup. For example, Zhigulis, Kopeikas, 7s, and 5s are outdated cars. If not in retro condition, they usually indicate a low-income owner, like a student. The road attitude reflects this. The Niva, however, is viewed normally. It comes in 3-door, 5-door, and pickup versions, plus an extended 3-door. With the Niva, there's a stable attitude towards it. The Niva comes in 2 main body types, 3-door and 5-door. There's also a pickup version, and there's an extended version of the 3-door Niva. For those who don't need a rugged off-roader, there's the Chevrolet Niva option. And there is an extended version of the 3-door Niva. Also, for those who don't need such a tough SUV, there is the Chevrolet Niva option. Nowadays it's called Niva Travel. The most classic and the most common is of course the 3-door Niva, the Niva PD as it's called. So if you see it somewhere, it's not a movie, it's a Niva. They come in 3D and 5D. By the way, would you perhaps be keenly interested in me testing the 5-door model, the extended Niva, at your earliest convenience? The ones that are less common, which are less popular, but nonetheless they are theoretically more interesting for people because it has 5 doors, making it easier to get in the back. Would it be interesting? Let's brainstorm a bit, shall we? So there are like 100 comments saying they want the 5D version. And after this car, I'm going to buy myself the 5D. Let's get 100 comments. I'll count it a week after this video is released. If at least 100 people join in, that would be really interesting indeed. I'll go and get better visibility. Excellent, mirrors, big. The only downside is that you can't adjust them from the inside. That's a real bummer. But overall, the visibility is quite good. The only downside is that the car, which is otherwise quite reliable and efficient, sweats quite a lot, like any domestic car of that time with an unadvanced heating system. This means that the heater, which is not very powerful, can't handle all of this moisture, so the car fogs up quite easily. The fan often buzzes here. I just turned it on now. Oh! It all started with this low issue there. According to them, not in the waters, they make some special oilers. There, they lubricate these fans. In general, you really don't need to use the heater in this car much because it's quite warm on its own. The interior is small and the car heats up really quickly. Right now, it's about 10 degrees outside, and I've been driving all day without using the heater at all. The Niva, of course, is perfectly designed for rural dirt roads. Right now, it's about 10 degrees outside, and I've been driving all day without using the heater at all. The Niva is definitely perfectly designed for rural dirt roads. This car simply has no equal here. Well, first of all, you don't really mind if something happens to it. And secondly, it has a super soft energy-absorbing suspension with long travel. Perfect for country driving. That's exactly what the doctor ordered for country driving. If I could avoid driving on paved roads, I think I would just cruise along the dirt roads for everything. In terms of ergonomics, everything is quite comfortable. Everything is simple, made in a Soviet way, so it's easy to figure out. Nothing to get confused about. The brakes are adequate. But everything is simple. It's done in the Soviet style, but it's easy to figure it out. There's simply nothing to get confused about. The brakes are quite adequate. The only thing you need to be very careful about while driving. So this is about the car skidding, because on slippery roads the Niva can be quite nimble due to its short wheelbase. And you need to be careful about that. I mean, you could accidentally drift somewhere. And you need to pay attention to that. So you could accidentally drift somewhere. You just sit down, drive off, and even a complete novice can figure it out, but you need to get used to it. That is, sit down, drive off, and even a novice can figure it out. But you need to get used to it. Naturally, to those wobbly levers and so on. After a short drive, you get accustomed to the car. The gears are short, needing frequent shifts, unlike the UAZ. On calls, I use third gear to move slowly. It performs well from low to high speeds. Just like in the UAZ, sometimes I drive it when I need to talk on the phone. You put it in third gear and it just slowly drags along. It works well. Loud next gear clicks. Accelerate and shift loudly. No phone, more safety. You just need to shift, but it's very loud and you can already hear the next gear clicking in, but there's a huge plus to that. You won't be talking on the phone unnecessarily, which means your immediate safety, it will definitely improve on the road. Yeah, and it's not very easy to hear in the Niva, so you'll have to practically shout into the phone. And what if we add sound insulation to it, which will add more than 100 extra pounds? I think that would be unnecessary for the Niva, at least in terms of extra weight. By the way, speaking of a deep modernization of the car, thank God it wasn't there, because when buying spare parts for this Niva, it is almost impossible to make a mistake. If you take a part from a Niva 3D, half of the Zhiguli part fits, then it will fit here anyway. Because let's say if you take the same UAZ Patriot, it's impossible. I can say that with confidence. As the owner of 2 new Patriots for 3 years, I've already fixed everything that can be fixed in them. It's impossible to buy the right spare parts. Even if it's a specialist mechanic who seems to know everything about them, when you're picking out parts for it, there's still a huge chance of making a mistake. Huge! If you're fixing, say, 5 parts on a UAZ, you have 5 replacements, 5 parts. One of them definitely won't fit. And you'll have a car that's taken apart just hanging there, and you'll have to get to the store by taxi, by minibus, or even by dogs to change that part because no one knows what it costs. That's a huge screw-up. UAZ, yeah, they're modernizing it. Yeah, good job. Yeah, they release each model with some upgraded engine or something like that. But nothing from the old fits the new. If foreign cars have a VIN code, no one can find anything for a Russian car based on the VIN code. Well, in the regions here, the Niva has an advantage. You can go to any junkyard, any store, and just point with your fingers, showing roughly like this is the engine and I need this part here. They quickly understand you and give you the exact part you need without any mistakes. That's a plus. They immediately understand you and give you the exact part you need without any mistakes. It's a huge thrill. Again, for beginners, it's probably the best car. It's like a construction set for adults, so it can be done, and even a child can put it together. In terms of the interior layout and dashboard, the Niva also has several modifications. There's one that's really old school, like Grandpa's, the first version, the 6-cylinder one, which I actually like. It's an interesting design. It's actually quite classic. He suited Vasya the best out of everyone. It matched the car's appearance. Then there's this kind of interior like we have here. This is the kind of style that was trendy in the 90s when everything started to look more clunky, trying to mimic that foreign car style. The interior quality isn't great. It's creaky, loose and wobbly. It's hard to get hurt on it. Everything is flimsy. But it's probably hard to bump into it and get hurt. In general, everything is so soft, so liquid. But one of the advantages is that it's very easy to take apart. That is, on the same UAZ Patriot, in order to remove this dashboard, it takes a whole day for a whole team of mechanics to work, and then another whole day to put it all back and forth. And any student can take it off in the garage, yeah, really, without any tools. I think you just need something like a Swiss Army knife with a lot of different functions to take this car apart. You don't need any tools here, and there's a completely new interior. It's quite modern now with all the knobs and everything in a contemporary style. It also looks interesting. So regarding the question of whether the Niva has changed at all, well, I don't know, I wouldn't approach it so skeptically. At least the engines have changed, the interiors have changed, so what else do you need for happiness? The Niva has many different modern names. This is the Niva Urban. It's for travel. Urban is a car for the city and travel is a car for traveling. Of course, these names don't really suit these cars at all. To be honest, frankly speaking, I thought of and created my own name. I suggest that perhaps after Molotov has adopted a trendy name in English. The name is Summer. And it translates, it seems, to such a cool sounding English word. Sounds like resident come the club. It's very simple indeed, just a summer resident, as they say, with the kind of hype that's truly popular in marketing these days. But with the real truth in mind, this is actually the actual purpose of this car. Summer resident. Paint.
Similar to the changes observed in American cities, everything here has been modified. If you enjoyed this content or found it useful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Your support is appreciated and helps us continue to deliver quality content. The name is Stick. Similar to water, hair, sand polygon, difficult climb. And now there is no etching wheel. Now we'll actually see if the engine is just sufficient enough. I'll really try it in second gear, drive up a hill, we'll see what happens. For me, this is no secret. The car has already been tested several times by the time of today's filming. It powers through, hitting the rev limiter in second gear. You can even shift to third. If you pick up a bit of speed, you can even shift into third. The pull is just insane on this car. These are not deflated tires. I'll say it right away, UAZ Patriot. With this kind of run-up on pumped-up tires, it won't make it up. 100%. Patriot struggles on sand. Deflate tires or run-up, test if unsure. So without a run-up on loose sand, because of its heavy weight and not so great weight-to-wheel size ratio, the Patriot on stock tires won't make it. If anyone has doubts, you can come over and we'll check it out. Like any respectable SUV, you can take the Niva out for a spin. If you're outside, it doesn't interfere with the car as a whole. Go ahead! You can drive along with it. If you definitely like it, go there. From above or from the side, even front, Niva's twist. Even the front. You can't stop the Niva's twist. So basically, there's a low gear. It's time to talk about the most pressing issue. Size of the trunk in the Niva. The trunk doesn't open at all here. There's no face. I recently watched some movies where the main character approaches and opens something and then looks at him. So I think I've definitely never had anything shorter than that. There's nothing here, only the handle opens from inside the cabin.
So, here in general, as you can see, the trunk size is actually decent. The door lifts up, but not quite high enough. That can be fixed with a lift. Just a little boost to the suspension. The trunk size is not the smallest. There are smaller cars with much less trunk space. The mastic goes on easily. The mastic from standard plast was applied to the car's wheel arches and underside. No rust, no sandblasting on lower parts. Life theme mastic from standard plast. We applied mastic to the wheel arches and underside of the car. You won't have rust and it will be quiet inside. It's effective insulation and I recommend it. Buy a complete kit and we'll deliver it anywhere in Russia. So it's like sound insulation, like vibration insulation. and it works really well. I recommend it. There might be a price increase coming, so for now the prices are still the old ones. Purchase a kit, delivered free. Includes stickers. Mastic used on green, tested tough. And we will give you 2 stickers as a gift, so be sure to order exactly this one. By the way, the mastic, which is a type of adhesive or sealant, was used on the green surface. And look, the main thing to note here is that this was used on the green and has successfully passed 3 years of simply the most severe and rigorous off-road tests with water exposure. And nothing rusted underneath it. It rusted everywhere, but under the mastic, under the soundproofing, nothing rusted. So, I personally recommend it. We've applied this mastic to all our cars without fail. And, by the way, the tow rope giveaway is crawling into view. The contest is already going on in VK. If anyone hasn't had a chance yet, go ahead. The conditions are really simple. And you could win. Here's the tow rope. We also offer worldwide delivery, and we'll deliver this rope to you for free. Participate. Links for mastic and tow rope are below. Back to the trunk. Many bags fit, and fold the back seats for more space. All for you, subscribers. So, we're back to the trunk. Lots of bags can fit in here, and if you need more space, you can fold down the back seats. I won't say anything about the roomy rear seats, since this is not for you, since there is practically none there. With 4 people in this car, it's okay, and maybe 5 people can squeeze into the back seat. In terms of the interior, there's enough space. Folding down the back seat provides a bigger trunk. So, in terms of the interior, for some rural or country trips, there's definitely enough space. If you fold down the back seat, you'll have an even bigger trunk. I've also seen people sleep in this car, especially with the back seat folded down. To be more precise, I didn't mention that. They pull you out of the car, pushing the front seats all the way forward, another about 1.70 meters. Approximately here, a surface is formed on which you can even sleep. So in general, the operation is normal. That is, there is nothing critical here. It looks like the owner of life is the most separate, at least for the summer. I'm the master of my life for the summer. Yes, for the summer, the master of my life. And so, friends. Well, here it is. I have to say, I've really gotten used to this car. I've been attached to it for almost a month now. I drive it and find joy in it, both fixing it and breaking it. In general, I'm thinking about how I can enhance it further in some civilian directions. So far, I like everything. The prices are good, and this light car meets all my requirements and needs. This car overall fully meets my needs. Does it meet your needs? I think you've already figured that out during this video. If you have any questions left, of course, feel free to ask them down in the description. After driving it some more, I will definitely write a final conclusion, a final review of this car, how this car performed, and what its overall condition and mood are like. So that was Alex with you. Don't slow down the channel, not you. Our new project is Budget Cars. Hello everyone. Bye bye. I'm going to drive over here looking cool, and then I'll just walk out of the frame. Just don't fall over. To the side there, and don't break the threshold. Be careful. So I got a quest to take my parents from the dacha, and I won't take the Patriot on purpose because I want to test its capacity. After all, for someone with a dacha, a car is primarily for bringing everything to and from the dacha. This is what the trunk looks like. It's a little dirty, but after off-roading, that's not the worst thing. The most important thing is the trunk capacity. Well, it's really quite big. The trunk turned out well. I unloaded all the junk, including cones and everyday stuff. Now we're going to pack an endless amount of things in there. Let's see how it all fits. Plus there are 2 more seats in the front. Well, plus 2 seats in the front, of course. If there are more family members, they will have to drink either on foot or by minibus or taxi. So, it's really just right for two? Let's see if everything we need fits in the Nivas. So, well, everything actually fit in easily, everything is arranged. It's quite a large loading surface. The bottom is flat. Now let's see if Nevas will make it home and if it won't fall apart. Because the whole row below is made up of rolls, they are quite heavy, and the Niva's load capacity is small. And our Niva isn't young anymore, so we're heading into the city. Okay, that's it. We got to the city. The Niva didn't fall apart. Everything's fine. The jars were delivered safe and sound. That's it. Fire. Also from the pressing questions that viewers are asking about the Niva. Can a girl drive a Niva? I mean, is it possible to buy the car for the husband and sometimes have the wife drive it? Or for the wife for trips to the countryside to get a car like that? Yes, definitely yes. The only question is about the power steering. It's not critical overall, but it's better to choose a car with power steering for this kind of use. Combinations, so to speak. I was dragging cans, out of breath, and in terms of control. If you compare it with UAZ, it is 100 times simpler. That is, in essence, it is like a classic. You have something closer to a military vehicle, more like a Gaz, something I don't know how to describe well. In general, it's harder to handle the UAZ because of its size and the complexity of the controls. But it's definitely harder for me to drive the new one than the Niva. I mean, the gears are more complicated there. Sometimes it happens to stick in and so on. So in this regard, the Niva definitely wins. So it's a car that can be taken for a girl. Girls can take this car.